saying hello? Hi everybody, it's Karen. I wanted to do my weekly wrap up and tell you guys about my reading this week. This has actually been slightly over a week. I think I did my last video on a Friday and now it's a Sunday, so it's like an extra day or two in there. But I read 6 books during that time, so it's been a really good reading time for me, although they are kind of shorter, so that's probably why there's that many of them. But anyway, the first one that I read was for my Reading the Rainbow read along that I'm doing, and it is called Totally Joe by James Howie. And this is by the author of Bunnicula. Apparently, he was married to a woman for a while, and then when she passed away, he came out at an older age saying that he was actually gay. And so this book, it's actually a series of books called The Misfits, and Joe is one of this group of members of the group of the Misfits, and he is basically a 12-year-old. He's openly gay, and yeah, all of his friends, they just don't fit in for one reason or another, and this is his story. Basically, his teacher gave him an assignment to do an alpha biography, so he has to do a little entry for A, B, C, etc. And so this book is broken up like that. It starts off obviously with A in October, and A is for Addie, and Addie is his best friend, who I freaking adore because her family, they're like vegetarians, and I forgot what else I loved about her family. They seemed really feminist, and yeah. So basically, each of the Misfits has their own book, so I do really want to read Addie's book. But I think the biggest thing that stuck out to me in this book was just this whole theme of like being who you are and being confident in yourself no matter what other people think, because I kind of feel like my lifestyle doesn't really fit into the norm. Like, I'm straight and all that, so I'm not talking about it from that perspective, but I'm just talking about like what I do with my free time. My love of reading is not typical, or it's not typical in America anyway. I don't tend to I feel like the standard American routine is like you go to the gym after work, you have dinner, and then you like watch Netflix for the whole rest of the evening or watch TV. Like, I don't care about The Bachelor. I do not care about a lot of the things that I feel like someone my age should care about. And so I really appreciated that idea of like, be who you are, because I am, and I feel like since I was like in my late 20s, I kind of like was like, this is who I am and I don't care what other people think. But it is hard at sometimes. Like this weekend, I had been exposed to COVID, so I just said I'm just gonna stay home and have a quiet weekend. And a bunch of people were like, you don't need to. It was 3 days before they had symptoms, so they said like, oh, you don't need to stay home and blah 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 blah, and they were kind of like judging that I was just gonna stay home and read all weekend, which honestly, even if I hadn't been exposed, I would kind of love to stay home and read all weekend. But anyway, so that is just my rant going off on another topic about kind of not fitting the mold or not fitting in. But this book was lovely for kids, for adults. I love how kids could understand and connect to this book even if they were not gay, because like I said, there are bigger messages about fitting in and about being yourself and all that sort of stuff. And I love that kids could read this and just get to know a gay character, because their friends may or may not be openly gay when they're 12. So yeah. The next book I read was The 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life by Karen Armstrong. I already made a separate video of this, so I'm not going to say much about this other than that I loved it. I got it from the library and then I had to buy it, and it has writing all in it and it will be reread a million times. So definitely watch that video if you're interested in hearing more about this, and definitely maybe one that you want to buy. Next, I read a book on my Kindle, and it is called The Haunting of Bryn Wilder by Wendy Webb. I got this free from Amazon, and basically I had read other Wendy Webb books before. I think my favorite is The Haunting of Mercy Albin or The Fate of Mercy Albin or something like that. It was so scary. It was definitely one that I wanted to like throw in my freezer. This one was not scary. It was more like emotional and kind of thinking about deeper issues. There was that kind of chilly ghost factor, but it was more of a minor piece to the story as opposed to being what the whole story was about. So basically it tells of the story Bryn, who is a college professor, and she's had some turmoil in her life recently, and she just kind of wants to get away from the summer. So her friend like has a hotel in this town or something, and I want to say it was in northern Minnesota, and she ends up not staying with her friend, but she stays at a different hotel, and it's just kind of in this touristy small town location. And it reminded me so much of northern Michigan in the summer, so it was definitely really cozy. But the story is just kind of this hotel she stays in, the different relationships she gets involved in during the summer with people. And yeah, there's obviously the mystery factor, but there's also like themes of like Alzheimer's and family and memories, and time is a big one. Yeah, I don't want to share too much to give it away, but I definitely think that even though it was not super scary or anything like that, it was an impactful book in some regards, and definitely made me think about things at a deeper level. The next one that I read is All But My Life by Gerda Wiseman Klein. And this one obviously has tons of tabs. This is kind of your typical Holocaust story. With Gerda growing up. It starts when she is, I don't know how old, but she's like a teenager in bits of this. And some things I just found like connections to based on the COVID situation, based on who our president is in the US. And I'm by no means saying that I have experienced anything like she has, because this is absolutely horrible, but I did connect to the text. One of the things that she starts off in the beginning is she's talking about when Germans came to her town. I'm trying to remember, she was in Poland. When they first came to her town, all her neighbors all of a sudden start putting up like the Nazi flag and stuff like that, and she's just shocked because these people that she's known her entire life, you know, not only are betraying her, but are also like not who she thought they were, and their values are very different. And I definitely connected with that. Like, so many people who I view as so kind and such good people, I don't understand how they can support certain politicians sometimes. And so she says the same people I had known all my life, they have betrayed us. She talks about how her family tried to at first just kind of maintain their patterns of life and just like their routines, just to create some sense of normalcy. And yeah, that's something that I think is kind of important when, at least initially when we were staying home for COVID, the routines and stuff. And then one thing that I have been thinking about a bit with the upcoming election is there's an article in, I think, the New York Times about how to survive a coup and like what to do if Trump's people try and take over, if they lose the election. And it was talking about like how you really have a limited amount of time to gain control. And I forgot how long it was, but it was like a matter of weeks. And in this book, she says it took the Germans 18 days, 18 short days to conquer Poland. What else did I want to share? So obviously she's writing this after the fact, but she's trying to show the perspective of someone who's living in this situation. And it's just interesting to hear them talk about it at the start of all these traumatic events that's happening to them, just like how long they think it will be until things are normal again. And I remember with COVID, and I'm not trying to compare the Holocaust to COVID, that's how I connected to this book. So I remember like, we were going to be home for 2 weeks, and then people thought we were just going to be back to school. And my parapro and myself, like we literally like just stayed at school on the last day for a long time because we both thought we're not coming back this year. And that's true. And I didn't even come back this year, the next school year, because I'm working from home. But she said, who would have thought that it would last a whole year? And obviously it lasted so much longer than that. But it's just when you're in it, you can't even imagine that it's gonna continue. Another thing that she talks about is how hard it was for her to do some of the activities that she had always loved. I've heard of a lot of people during stressful times with our political situation or with COVID having a really hard time reading, even though they're booktubers and they absolutely love reading. And she said that too. I gave up my favorite pastime, reading, which is just because it was just so hard for her to focus with everything that was going on and all the things in her life. And what is my last tab? Oh, I don't know that I want to read this, but there were a lot of very graphic things that happened that I know the Holocaust is horrible. I know what happened, but there were certain situations that I hadn't encountered before that were extremely graphic and extremely horrible. And just like, how could any human do this to another human? So I found this book really good. The author obviously survived. She wrote the beginning, I don't know what she calls it, like an intro or whatever. I know there's so many different names for an intro, but she talks about how this was basically therapeutic for her to write, and once she wrote it, then she kind of closed her door on that story and she felt like she could move on. Next, I needed a funny book because it's been kind of serious. I read Nora, Ephron, I Feel Bad About My Neck and Other Thoughts on Being a Woman. This book was really funny. It's obviously geared towards older women, but I found it interesting to hear about things from their perspective, because I think that even though my generation, like I'm 34, we are not quite like aging yet necessarily. Like we are, but I mean, we're not like, I just feel like there's some differences between like the older generation and us. Like for one thing I've noticed, and I don't know if this is just me or if this is everyone, but you're not supposed to ask a woman her age. And I hear that so much from older generations, and like I could care less. Like I don't care, I'll be like 99, I'll be like, I'm 99. Like I don't know if there's other people my age who care about people knowing how old they are. I don't. And the other thing, she was talking about all her creams and stuff for her face, and like I definitely have certain stuff that I like to use, but it's not over the top, and even when I'm older I don't think it will be over the top. And there's a big section on hair, and people my age do dye their hair. This is dyed. I've been dyeing it forever, but I don't think that there's like a necessity in my generation to dye their hair. And some people might be like, oh well, that's because you're not like totally gray yet or whatever. But there are a lot of people, especially during COVID, who have kind of embraced this idea of natural hair and just like having the color that your hair is come out. And for quite some time, I did not go to get my hair done because it was closed. And I wasn't really that self-conscious about all the grays that came out. And in fact, our COVID rates are so high right now that I think I might skip my December appointment too. And we'll see what happens, but it's not something I'm self-conscious about, even though I do have grays. And yeah, I just think that we have maybe a more loving perspective on our bodies and what we look like and stuff like that than the generation that Nora Ephron is from. And I know I'm not even supposed to take this book seriously because it's supposed to be like a comedy, but I'm just curious if anyone else feels that same way. And finally, my friend Allie told me to read Touching the Void by Jo Simpson, so I did. And she told me, don't research anything, like don't look into what it's about or anything, just read it. And so I did. I read it without knowing anything. It's obvious from the picture and stuff that Jo is probably a climber. And so yeah, it was definitely about that. It was about them climbing this mountain in Peru. And the pictures in the book, there was like a illustration that kind of gave the whole story away before it actually happened. But anyway, they're in a traumatic situation and I don't want to tell you about it either, just read it. But basically, I have no idea how Joe survived, how he wrote this book. It is absolutely insane to me, and it was good. So those are the books that I've read this week. I'm hoping to read a lot this upcoming week too, but obviously these books are all fairly short, so I might not be able to read as many if I'm conquering larger, I was gonna say novels, but I'm reading nonfiction, so larger books. I'm curious what you guys have read in the past week, and I will see you later. Bye.